This episode of Talking Timbers is brought to you by Appalachian Log Structures, Colorado Timber Frame, Log Home Insurance, International Homes of Cedar, Honest Abe Log Homes, Rustic Log and Timber, Stone Mill Log and Timber Homes, Timbercraft, and Timberhaven Log and Timber Homes.
The purpose of these segments is we get industry professionals to kind of talk to you a little bit about the process and things to think about in an educational format to kind of help you through that early stages of design right through the completion of building. And there's a lot of that in between, especially when you're building a custom log or timber frame home. With me right now is Rodney Robertson. He's from International Homes of Cedar. International Homes of Cedar is based in Woodinville, Washington. So he's up early this morning, Rodney. Appreciate that. And I know everybody else does. Everything looks good. So we're going to talk about the 3D CAD design process. I was just telling Rodney, I was a draftsman early on in my career, and I used to draw by hand, little bushes around the houses. And if you had to make a change, it was an eraser. We've obviously evolved. And Rodney, I want to tell everybody a little bit about that process and how it helps the customer.
Yeah, and that was a great lead in, Eric, because, International Homes of Cedar started in 1966. And so when we started, we were drawing. I wasn't there. I'm too young for that. Not much too young, though. Yeah. But we used to draw with, a drafting table and Mylar sheets and pencils, and you'd hand draw things out, and you had protractors to do your angles and straight edges. And, and then when the customer said, we'd like to change that window size, or we want to move that window, you're out there with your eraser erasing lines and drawing new lines. And it was a tedious process. It was more difficult to do changes. And it also didn't provide many tools for the customer to visualize what their house was going to look like. We'll talk a little bit more about that visualization process as we move through the progression to 3D design. IHC as a company transitioned in the late 70s and the early 80s to doing 2D CAD or two-dimensional computer-aided design. You were still drawing lines, but instead of drawing them with pencil on paper, you were drawing them with a mouse or some other pointing device on a computer screen. So it was much more efficient. But if someone wanted to move a window, you still had to essentially erase the lines and redraw the lines. It was faster to erase them and redraw them, and it didn't leave little sniblets on your piece of paper. But it still wasn't that efficient. So you gained efficiency on the designing side of things. In terms of how long it took a draftsman to make a change or to draw a plan, but you still didn't gain very much in the way of additional tools for a customer to visualize. So when I look at our archives of drawings, and we've done thousands of homes all over the world, but if you look at ones that we drew back in the 60s and 70s, and they're pencil, their a typical plan set is 2 to 4 pages because it was tedious to draw all that stuff. Then when in the 70s and 80s, when we moved to 2D CAD, you see now our drawing sets went to 8 or 9 pages because it was easier to draw things. It was easier to give more detail. So I think really did help from the construction perspective, but didn't really help the customer from the visualization perspective. And then I took over as president of IHC in the beginning of this century. It seems weird to say that, but 20th century from when we were born. And that's when we began our transition to 3D CAD or three-dimensional computer-aided design. And this really did revolutionize not just the design side of things, but the visualization side from the customer perspective. So no longer are you drawing lines on either a piece of paper or a computer screen. You're working with objects. And so you're taking, before we would draw a line, and like we're a timber home company. So we've got timbers that typically have a 7-inch height. And so you're drawing horizontal lines 7 inches apart. You were doing that with a pencil or with a computer screen. Now we have a timber object, and that object has the height and the thickness of what our timbers are. And we stack those timbers just like you do in the real world. And we also have, big libraries of objects that we can work with. So we can take a look at something like a kitchen and put in, refrigerators and countertops and all that kind of stuff. That is real easy. We just grab an object and stick it into the drawing. So it's much faster, allows us to do much more detail. So our plans now are, 15 and 20 pages long. So we've added a lot more detail, and we've now got a 3D model. So the customer can now
That's huge.
Look at that. And we've got, like in our booth here at the show, we've got our video when we do our factory tour, we've got an example of a fly through. But what's really unique, and this has just happened over the last 5 or 6 years, we can now email, well, it's too big to send an email, but we send a link that people can download the whole model for their house, and they can go to the vendor that we use for our drawing system and download a free viewer, and they can, to their heart's content, do fly-throughs of their house. It used to be that we could do fixed fly-throughs. We could pick a path to fly through, but now they can look at their model and look at their house from any perspective on the outside, look at the inside, what the kitchen's going to look like, what the cabinets are going to look like. And so it really has revolutionized the way people can visualize. And so they can make those changes in the computer rather than trying to make them in wood on the job site. So
on the job site, it allows for a lot less surprises, I guess you could say, on the job site. You kind of, and I think the key you said, Rodney, was the visualization for the customer. They can see what their house is going to look like. Whereas you said before you were literally looking at a 1 or a 2-dimensional floor plan, and you had a couple of views of an elevation, left, right, front, back. And that was really it in your couple of floor plans. And once you got to the job site, it's hard for people, if you haven't been through the process or don't understand that, visualizing that is really where it's at. And that's
one of the things that we've found over the years is that about 50% of the people can look at a 2D paper printed set of plans and visualize what it's going to look like, and about 50% can't. And for some unknown reason, those two groups tend to intermarry. So we often find
that's awesome. I've never heard that before. That's great. Well, listen, if you want to hear more of these tips on CAD design, I love the whole process of it, always have. I want you to make sure you reach out to Rodney. You can go to his booth. But I do want to give Rodney a couple minutes on IHC. Tell everybody about your company, yourself. I got a few minutes here, and just help them understand what you guys do out there in Washington.
Great. Yeah, so International Homes of Cedar is the company. We introduced engineered timber walls to the industry over 50 years ago. We have homes in all 50 states, 18 countries, on 5 continents. It's a unique building system. We have patented interlocking system. We have a unique timber that we patented in 2013 with a foam core that will outperform a 2x10 framed wall with our 30 bad insulation. We do 3D CAD design, so we do completely custom homes, cabins, commercial buildings. We did a big hotel up at the Denali National Park in 2017. That's been the #1 ranked hotel in all of Denali for the last 3 years.
Beautiful.
68 rooms. So please come by the booth. We'd love to share with you more about how we could help you turn your dream into reality.
Rodney, I want to thank you for this time today. It's always educational when we get to talk with industry professionals like you, and have a good rest of your day.